My name is Aylie, and I am 23 years old. This is my story on how I survived a pretty crazy suicide attempt. I had quite the journey with mental health. I have struggled with it for, I think, my whole life, honestly. It's just been something that is passed down from my family. My parents are depressed, their parents were depressed. But growing up, I felt like I didn't have a place in this world. My parents were separated, and trying to navigate through nurturing that relationship with my father, who is not in the home, was pretty hard. He wasn't in the home, so it was hard to be a child in that situation and say, "Hey, Dad, do you want to hang out?" Because your parents should be. I felt like I didn't have a place in the world because I didn't necessarily have a place in my family. I felt like the black sheep just because my parents were separated, and then my mom had kids with my stepdad, and then my dad had kids with my stepmom, so I was just kind of left in the middle to figure out where Aylie fell. And unfortunately, Aylie fell into the mentally ill side of the world, I'd say. When I was a teenager, I had struggled a lot with my familiar relationships. I wanted to be closer to my dad, wanted to be closer to my mom. I wanted a boyfriend. I wanted friends. I wanted all of these things that I was seeing on TV and on social media, but everyone was so mean to me. I was bullied relentlessly. That did instill a great deal of anxiety and depression, and it created the belief that I had about myself. My first suicide attempt, I was 14 years old, and it was after I had been sexually assaulted. Nobody was listening. My parents were so upset that I had tried to kill myself and didn't really ask why I tried to kill myself. So that issue went unresolved. Even now, nobody really knows that I was assaulted, and that's what triggered, the suicidal attempts over the years. So that first attempt was when I was 14, and then it happened every single year after that until I hit 19 years old. With the sexual assault, the number one issue is that I had felt like that was my fault. I had downloaded an app to meet friends. It was called Meet Me. I did meet someone that I thought was a friend. He was 18, he was an adult at the time, and he lured me out of my house at 1 a.m. I snuck out. I went to hang out with this kid in promises of and a friend, but that is not at all what happened. I was taken 30 minutes from my home, had to sneak into his house. That is where he assaulted me. And then after that, I went home and never talked about it again, because I was under the impression that sex was bad, because, when I asked any questions about it, my parents shut me down, did not want me to think about it, talk about it. That instilled some pretty crazy beliefs in me that maybe sex is bad, and maybe what happened to me was my fault, because I didn't know that it was going to result in sexual assault. Who would have known? I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I was very angry all the time. I wanted everything to just line up perfectly. I wanted my life to fall into place without having to do any work. I had fell pretty deep into addiction, starting when I was 16, and then was put into a residential treatment facility, which, I wasn't the most honest or transparent there, so I didn't get the best help. But again, I was under the control of my parents, so I didn't know how much I could say or tell my therapist without it returning to my parents. I was really scared of my parents, and I wish I wouldn't have been, because I now know that information would have helped them help me. And initially, it just started out with, I was just a teenager who wanted to smoke a lot of weed and drink. I had met a guy on the internet, and I drove to California from Utah to pick him up because I had known him on the internet for years, and that still resulted in and addiction. I had picked him up, brought him back. We got an apartment together. We got cats. We fell really, really, really deep into the pit of addiction. I was just so depressed from, not only the sexual assault 5 years earlier, but just a number of unresolved traumas that have just, compounded together to create that sadness and that pit in me that I was filling with, and all of these drugs that were just making me sicker and making me sadder. On top of the drugs, I was cutting myself, I was burning myself, I was hitting myself, doing all of these things that I did not deserve, but I couldn't comprehend that the drugs and the past experiences and all of the bad things that happened to me were not my fault. I don't know what it was that made me want to get clean in 2019. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I wanted to get clean. I think I wanted to get away from my ex. That brings me to, the treatment facility that I was in 2019. It was for an eating disorder. I was there for 30 days. I don't think I actually had an eating disorder. I think it was more just weight loss because of, the addiction and like that stuff doesn't help you gain weight. After I had gone to that facility in 2019, my plan was to fly home to Utah for Christmas and spend it with my family. I was gonna stay out in Utah and finish partial hospitalization treatment, but it never got to that point just because the attempt. It's frustrating because I was in treatment right before that. The night before that, I stayed at a hotel with just myself. One of my friends in treatment had been so kind as to giving me nearly $2,000 to take care of my car payment and take care of my cats. So instead, I used that money to go stay at a hotel for the night because I just wanted to hang out in California before I came home. I wanted to smoke again. I had called up a friend that lived in San Diego, and I was like, hey, do you have any? And he was like, yeah. So he came and he picked me up. We went to the beach and we had smoked and we're just hanging out. Things just started to get to feel weird. I started to visually hallucinate and see cartoons and scary stuff in the sand. It was at that point where there was so much going on, so much just going on inside me, and there was a lot of sadness and anger and frustration and stress, and I had no idea what to do. So I was like, hey, can you take me back to the hotel? I'm not feeling good. And he is like, yeah, all right, whatever. So he took me back to the hotel, and I sat in there for 8 hours just thinking and thinking and thinking. I thought I was going to die, so I had wrote letters to all of my family members. I fell asleep at 4 a.m. My aunt was supposed to pick me up at 6 a.m. to take me to the airport. Things still felt really, really weird, and in my head I was very anxious. I was very nervous. She was like, so how are you doing? Just making small talk, as aunts do. And it just got to a point where we were on the freeway and I was like, hey, I need you to take me to a hospital. I need to go to a hospital. And she was like, what? What's going on? You're about to get on a plane and go see your whole family. It's Christmas time. What do you mean I need to take you to a hospital? I told her, I was like, listen, Surf, I'm going to jump out of the car if you don't take me to a hospital. So you can make the decision there. I need help right this second. And she was like, oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. So she took me to the nearest hospital, and it was right across the street from her work. So she was like, hey, do you want me to stay with you? Do you want me to come inside? Do you what do you want me to do? And I was like, honestly, just go to work. I'm fine here. They'll help me out. We're good. She was like, okay, I'll go in, give them my number so they can contact me, just keep me updated. And I was like, okay, perfect. They took me back and were asking what was going on, and I told them, like, I want to kill myself. I had told them that I smoked, and at that very instant, they ripped me off. It was game over. They were like, oh, do you have a history with addiction? And I said yes. They're like, okay, do you have a history with mental illness? I said yes. And they're like, okay. They gave me told me to calm down, hang out, sleep it off in the waiting or in the back room. So I did. I took that, I hung out, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, things still just, I was dissociating very, very heavily, like didn't feel like anything that I was living through was actually real and true. It just didn't make any sense that someone would feel that way. The doctors were just not taking me seriously. They asked me how I was doing. I said, I feel a little bit better, but something still just isn't right. One would think that indicates your patient is still not in the right state of mind, but I guess not. They were like, okay, cool. She's family oriented, she's future oriented, she wants to get back to Utah, she wants to do this, she wants to do that, she wants to do this. Like, she has a future lined up, let's get her out of here. And it just kind of sucked, because I was like, I come in here with a plan telling you guys that I know exactly how I want to kill myself, and you're not hearing or taking me seriously. And they gave me a taxi voucher and said, sit in the waiting room. I had called my mom and I told her, like, I just don't want to feel this way anymore. And she was like, it's okay, just breathe, everything will be fine. You're around a great team of people who can help you out. Just wait until your aunt gets there. Being so far away from home, it made it a lot easier to act on my suicidal thoughts. If I were to kill myself, none of my loved ones would have found me. All right. And that was the biggest issue my whole life. That's why I've never done anything crazy fatal, because I just didn't want a loved one to be scarred for the rest of their life with losing me and finding me like that. I was angry because my whole life I have gone unheard. I tell my parents that I'm sexually assaulted and want to kill myself, and rather than saying, oh my God, Aylie, I'm so sorry, they said, why do you want to kill yourself? So then that translates over to my doctors saying, you don't want to kill yourself. You're just high. So I'm looking at this cab voucher, I'm thinking about all of these things. I'm just like, all right, you know what? I'm done. So I walked out of the hospital, right past the front receptionist. She looked at me, waved me out, told me have a good day. And I'm walking out in tears. I'm walking out sobbing, losing my mind. And they still waved me out. So I got out of the hospital and saw that there was a Lime scooter. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went over to I tried to download that Lime app, but it wasn't working. And I was like, damn it, and I looked at the scooter and it had already been paid for. It was free. So I was like, oh, awesome. Took the Lime scooter and rode about 15-20 minutes down to UTC Mall. UTC Mall has a parking structure that's only about 3 stories. I looked at the parking garage and just like I really am gonna do this. I climbed to the top. I looked over the edge. I had sat there for maybe 10-15 minutes recording a video for my family, just expressing that I was sorry. I took my purse off. It was wrapped around my chest. I took my purse off. I put my phone in there, and then I put my bag just somewhere at the top, hoping that someone would find it and take it to the cops after, or the cops would find it. I didn't know, but I put it down and stood back about 20 feet, closed my eyes, crossed my heart, and I ran. And and hurled myself over the barrier. I don't remember hitting the ground. I don't remember really anything after that. Some customers had found me and they thought that I was drunk because apparently I was still somewhat responsive. My face was bloodied and I was laying on the ground. I couldn't get up. These passerbys had called the cops, and once they got there, they had pulled me to my feet, which is just beyond comprehension considering I had a compression fracture in my spine that they didn't know about, that they could have made worse by pulling me to my feet. I don't know, but it was at that point that I had just passed out and went unresponsive. The paramedics took me back to the same hospital that I had just left from. You know, it's interesting to see the intake paperwork for my emergency visit say, you know, quote that I would try to kill myself in any way that I could. You know, first thought would be to jump off a building. You know, they quoted that, and then 4 hours later, I ended up right back in critical condition after jumping off of a building. You know, I had told them explicitly my plan, and they didn't listen. They didn't help me. I don't really know what happened after that, aside from, like, I know that, you know, they called my mom, obviously. She was states away and had no idea what to do. My aunt was absolutely distraught, knowing that she was right across the street from where I had jumped. I remember, you know, waking up and I looked over and my stepmom and my mom were by my side. They were from Utah, so it really blew my mind that they flew out within a couple of hours to come and check on me and be with me and experience that with me. After I had fallen, all I could hear, you know, like an air raid siren in my head was, "It's not your time. You need to go back." And it was my grandpa's voice just encouraging me to not give up. I woke up and saw my mom. My stepmom was just so confused because it made no sense. My lungs had collapsed. My intestines were wrapped around a bone that had dislodged from my spine. I'd shattered my back. I had broken both orbitals in my eyes, my nose. So the fact that I am walking and able to function is really a blessing. It's just so crazy how lucky I was to fall in the exact right place, hit the exact spot on my head, you know, break that bone in my back that didn't paralyze me, right? Like, there's so many things that should have happened that didn't. My mom and stepmom did have to go home for Christmas, obviously. So I had spent Christmas in the hospital by myself with an amazing nurse who, her name was Miss Aylie, and every day I think about her, and I am so grateful for that woman because she told me that I would be in the situation that I am now, but I didn't believe her at the time. That recovery process was tough. I mean, I had to relearn how to walk. I couldn't use the bathroom by myself. I couldn't shower by myself. Being in a situation where I couldn't even sit up to feed myself. You know, it was pretty dehumanizing in a way, but that nurse saved me. She really helped me see that what I was going through wasn't something to be ashamed of. They discharged me to a psychiatric facility. I needed treatment. I needed more treatment. So I was in this psychiatric facility in California, and again, like, it was just after I had to relearn how to walk, so I'm in that facility with a back brace and a walker, feeling like an old person, unable to navigate through anything because I was confused, I was sad, I didn't know what was going on with my treatment, I didn't know what was going on with getting back home. You know, there was just so much that was left out of my hands. I was very ashamed. I was very, very, very ashamed of not succeeding, honestly, in my suicide attempt. In the past, my suicide attempts had consisted of, taking excessive amounts of medication, typically controlled substances, just because that is what I thought would end my life. In 2014, I had taken nearly every ounce of my little brother's ADHD medication. In 2015, I had taken every single bottle in the medicine cabinet at my home. In 2016, same thing. 2017 was another overdose. 2018 was an overdose, and then 2019 it had gotten a little bit crazier just because I had tried to kill myself a few times that year. But the first time I had overdosed on heroin and crack. In 2019, I think it was in June, so I was 18 at the time. I had overdosed on heroin and crack after smoking with my ex-boyfriend and his friend at the time. They weren't paying attention to how much I was using, so I smoked significantly more than them. This is all just what's been reiterated back to me, but my boyfriend had woke up and looked over to see me blue and foaming at the mouth. So, my roommate calls the ambulance as well as my mother. I don't know if I was in a coma or if I just wasn't awake for days. I mean, again, I had my family, I had my dad, my mom, my boyfriend, everyone by my side. After I got back to Utah from California, I went to another residential treatment facility for mental health and addiction. I was there for almost 2 years, off and on, just bouncing back and forth from residential to partial hospitalization to intensive outpatient to just general outpatient. And then I went to their sober living. I was bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out my place in this world. At the end of the day, all that it took for me to overcome, all of this was an understanding and finding empathy for my inner child. I think that, something that a lot of people forget is that we are all children trapped in adult bodies. We were all a child at one point who experienced some terrible stuff thing that they couldn't process in that moment. So being able to recognize that there is something in us that needs to be nurtured, it needs to be addressed, and needs to be felt for, I think that helped me a lot. Being able to just look internally and see that I deserve better, and I have always deserved better.